Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to start a new fun little series on my channel called one-shot readings. So this term's actually borrowed from the D&D community, where a one-shot is basically a self-contained game designed to be played in a single session. So it generally exists outside of the main storyline and can detour wildly from your regular gameplay. So what we're going to be doing in this series is sort of playing through one of my one-shot readings, which for me are basically readings that are independent and stand apart from my normal practices. So these are things that are different than, like, say, my monthly medicine or moon readings or cycle readings, things like that I tend to do in any given month or any given season. So oftentimes these are just where I grab a few decks and just see what happens. So kind of like a D&D session, we'll just be seeing where the adventure takes us. So I've got a few decks here, and usually I kind of sit with a theme or an idea. There's usually something that will kind of spark me doing a sort of one-shot reading where I'm just like, there's a deck I want to play with and I just want to see how it goes, and I'll just grab anything that I feel like really sits in alignment with that deck. So today we're going to do a one-shot reading, and the deck that inspired this is actually the Compendium of Witches Oracle. I also have here the Earth Wisdom Oracle, the Fairy Blessing cards, and then this is my Forest of Enchantment Tarot. So generally what I like to do with a one-shot reading is I don't use a spread. I don't really even plan anything out. I just grab a few decks. This is a great practice for when I have a new deck that I want to play with. This one is fairly new in my collection. I've only played with it a little bit in the last month or two. And I just want to have a little bit of a play. It is not serious. It is not something that I record in my journals. It's usually not even something I take a picture of. It is just in the moment play. And I think it's really important to also allow ourselves these times where we are just having a play and expressing our own creativity through our work with the cards. It doesn't always have to be some deep dive into personal growth or self-reflection for me. I'm not always seeking advice. I'm not always looking for, like, what's the next thing to do or the next thing that I need to learn or grow or whatever it is. Sometimes I just want to play with my cards. And so that's kind of why I developed these sort of one-shot readings, was just to give me opportunities to play with my cards outside of my normal tarot practice. So let's go ahead and jump in. So we're going to start with the Compendium of Witches. And this is how this practice goes, which is I just start grabbing decks and, like, let's see what comes out of it. Now for this particular deck, we have two different sections here. So we have the witches or the guides, and then we have the sort of message cards. I don't know exactly what of this I'm going to be using, so I'm going to pull them apart because, as you can see, I keep them apart. And I kind of want to just start with the witches, and I'm going to see what sort of guide is going to be maybe narrating my one-shot reading today. I'm going to hopefully do a few of these over the next couple months, just so you can see how I incorporate different themes, different ideas into this sort of a non-practice tarot practice. Right? It's not really practice because it's just for fun. I'm just playing, and it gives me a chance to explore my cards and to see how they interact with each other, how they interact with me. Again, I personify all of my decks because I think that's just good fun. And so I use this also as another way to see how a deck is going to talk to me, work for me, express itself in a way that maybe I would understand. So I'm going to just pull a card. And we got the Shapeshifter. So the Shapeshifter is going to be my guide on this journey today. I do like to get into the guidebooks as I go, particularly for the oracles, not so much for the tarot because I kind of just use the imagery and fall back on my tarot knowledge. But for the oracles, if I'm doing something like this where I've got like kind of this central figure that I'm starting with, or maybe a focus card, I will get into the guidebook to see what it says. We do have keywords, but I'm not really going to pay attention to those because one-shot readings for me are kind of a narrative experience. It's kind of telling me a story. So it says, she leaves her sleeping body and lets the wolf skin grow on her new bones. As she runs through the forest, her shape changing, glistening scales emerge under the shedding fur, and then feathers. She spreads her wings and flies into the night sky, weightless, fearless, feral. It is thanks to her capability to emphasize and see things from various perspectives that this shapeshifter is able to navigate ever-changing environments. She represents our ability to adjust to unfamiliar and difficult conditions, and her cunning allows her to swiftly find ways to overcome obstacles. So she's our shapeshifter running through the forest, which is just perfect considering that the deck that I chose to be sort of the primary story coming through this reading is my Tarot of Enchanted Forest and Forest of Enchantment Tarot. I don't know why I can't ever remember the name of this deck. I apologize. I am going to use this deck now to sort of create this little narrative story from the shapeshifter. And again, we're just taking a little bit of a journey. We're going on a little bit of an adventure and having a little bit of play. So what message or story does the shapeshifter want to share with us today? Throwing cards around. So generally, I like to pull 3 cards. You can pull as many as you want. You can do these sort of readings in whichever way you want. There is no right or wrong way. There's no rhyme or reason to this. And sometimes I just randomly pull cards to see what I get, to see what story is coming out. So we got the 8 of Spells, the 2 of Spells, and the Child of Spells. How funny is that? So again, when it talked about her shape-shifting, it did mention her turning into a bird of sprouting feathers. So this maybe is our shapeshifter sprouting her feathers to be able to rise above the situation, and she's gonna go explore. Now, because I'm just kind of having a little bit of a play here, I'm not really worrying too much about what these messages really mean in like the grand scheme of things or like in a bigger picture sense. I've also pulled out the other cards from the Compendium of Witches. This works really well for a one-shot reading because this deck kind of has almost like 2 decks in one, and I tend to grab anywhere from 3 to 6 decks for these when I'm doing these readings, just to give me a real variety of images to work with and stories to tell and messages to explore. So what I'm feeling like is that each of these cards now sort of needs maybe a sort of underlying energy to them. So I'm going to use these cards for that. Let me just give it a proper shuffle here. And hopefully, as you'll be able to see, like these are fairly quick little readings, just little moments of play that I like to incorporate into, you know, my week. I don't do them every single day, but I usually try to have a play at least once a week. So now I'm gonna pull a couple of cards. So here we have Oath, and I feel like that belongs there. And I'm gonna pull one for the child, and look, we got the hare. How funny is that? So that's feeling very much like the focal point of what these cards are. So again, I'm telling a little story, but again, let's just jump into the guidebook to see, because I am unfamiliar with this deck, I want to see what it actually means. So 57 is the Oath card. It says she holds the cold blade in one hand and her soft braid in the other. With confidence, precision, and a clear mind to guide her, she performs one single cut. Speaking a vow to herself, the braid falls to the ground. Her thoughts are still and her heart in peace. The Oath card represents decision-making, resolve, willpower, and courage. Okay, so maybe she is letting go of, you know, whatever worldly trappings she had in her human form here, and she's taking flight with that. She's going to break free of whatever it is that's been maybe holding her back from taking this adventure, from flying into the woods. And over here we have this Child of Spells, and I still haven't figured out how this Child of Spells works into the story. So let's see what comes out of the Hare card. So the Hare says, dusk gently envelops the earth as the faraway song of the Fae rises from the green earthen mounds. A hare turns towards you, its wide eyes warning you to caution before swiftly disappearing in the tall grass. The Hare card represents readiness and alertness, as well as the luck that we create for ourselves by seizing the right moment. So that's interesting with this Child of Spells here. There's a bit of caution here in this. Maybe whatever this child is trying to turn this hare into is not such a great idea. So let's keep going with our little story. I feel like we need something here for this 2 of Spells. I feel like that part of the story isn't really quite developed yet. You know, he's working with some OMs. Maybe if I had an OM deck, that would have been good to pull in. Sometimes I like to just kind of see what comes out before I decide on all the decks that I'm going to pull in, because I want to see what's going to come up for me. Maybe that Celtic Spirit would have been even better. And as I'm saying that, I'm actually going to switch decks, because this is all play and that's how it goes sometimes. Because now that I see that Two of Spells here, I'm thinking this is a better fit for a message from that particular card or going along with that particular card. So we have our shapeshifter taking flight, making that vow to herself to leave behind. Maybe she's taking flight because she needs to help this child here. So let's see what the Two of Spells wants to share with us in this little shapeshifter story into the woods that we've created. So we've got the Green Man, nature, connection, and source with our Two of Swords. Let's just put him here, or Two of Spells. I know I'm kind of covering up the imagery, but again, we're just playing, so it doesn't have to look great on the table, just have to be able to see it so that you can see what's going on. Let's go ahead and jump into the guidebook for the Green Man too, even though we have these wonderful keywords about connection, nature, and source. So it says, the Green Man beckons to all who wish to follow. He teaches us that there is no separation between human beings and the natural world. We are a part of nature. We are nature, whether we act like it or not. I kind of love that. I mean, there's way more in the guidebook about it, but I think that's like plenty for us to really dive into right now, to have this idea of maybe this child here needs to reconnect to the earth. Maybe this is a guardian of the child who is trying to teach him that like we need to be at one with the earth. And maybe the child, through this use of magic here, is trying to manipulate this rabbit in some way that is unhelpful. Again, this is just a story-based sort of reading. You can, you know, pull out of it whatever you want, because we're not really looking for an answer here. We're just playing. We're looking for a story. So I usually like to wrap up my little story that I have here, which is pretty much like this shapeshifter has come around. She's taken flight. She's going to maybe connect with this little family unit here, where the guardian of the child is trying to instill this idea of reconnection to the earth, of remembering that we are not separate from it, we are a part of it, and we need to work in harmony with it. And I feel like there's a little bit of warning with this child here of like, you know, if we're not careful, we can grow up to try and make nature and magic work for us rather than working in alignment with it. So we're trying to dominate it rather than coexist with it. And I mean, that is a good message, I think, to have just in a general sense, but that's not really the point of this reading. Although anytime I work with cards, I feel like there's something that I take away from that experience. There's a message there. There's a little nugget of realization or knowledge that gets stored away somewhere in my brain. But really, this is just a for fun little experiment and play with my cards, an excuse to get out decks, play and see how things work, see how things read, and just explore the imagery, explore the narrative, explore cards and what they can offer in terms of beyond just advice or guidance seeking. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull a fairy blessing card, because I usually like to end these little narrative stories of these little one-shot readings with some sort of a blessing or an oracle message to just take with us. And we got a blessing from the ever young. How cool is that with our child? Let's go ahead and get into the guidebook and see what it has to say. This is also a really great opportunity to explore your guidebooks if that's not something you normally do, because we're not like really creating a reading. We're not looking to see how this applies to us in a personal way. We're just exploring the messages and the energies that are coming out of these cards without really asking anything in return of it. The fairy gift a joyous energy that flows all the days of your life, whether you be young or an elder with many years behind you. For you, human child, were loved when you were small, and now that you are growing old, the fae love you still. and will lead you to an energy that belongs to the whole world and which must not be denied to you. So that's really cool. I feel like that's the coming full circle of our story is this fairy now, the shapeshifter has maybe connected with this fairy to help guide this young person, this elder and this young person into cultivating that deep connection into the earth and into co-creative magic rather than the idea of sort of trying to dominate over the land and over the magic and the creatures within it. I think that's a wonderful little story. Like we just had a little tarot adventure here with some cards. It's a little narrative experience, a little storytelling, a little bit of play, and it's just a practice that I like to do for fun. Again, I call it my one-shot readings because it exists outside of my normal tarot practice. It's not something I journal. It's not something I record. It's just taking a moment to explore, to play, and to have a little bit of fun with my cards. Definitely let me know what you think of these little one-shot readings. I really enjoy putting them together for myself, and so I would love to have the opportunity to share them with you as well if you're interested. So definitely let me know in the comments below. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box of this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.